Hey, Bill.
Hey, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ.
It's getting a little cooler in northern DMZ. Is southern DMZ still traditionally swampy and muggy and disgusting?
It is going to be like 102 degrees today. Let me show you something, Bill. I'm wearing these red pants. These are like vineyard vine red or something. This is what you can do when you're in the southern DMZ. You can basically dress like a pimp. And it's called peacocking, is what it is.
Is that right?
When
is that what the kids call it?
When I'm you sort of ornament yourself in bold peacock colors to attract attention to yourself. I don't know if the kids call it that. I call it peacocking. And actually, today's my second day of doing it. I call it recocking when you go to this level.
I won't go into context on that.
But you know what the great thing, though, is no matter how preppy I dress, I could never compete in the Tucker Carlson Daily Caller office. I'm going to be like at least maybe not even in the top 10.
I guess that's what the people want to know. Is Tucker as preppy off camera as he is on?
Not only he is exactly the same person off camera as on. Like he is what you see is what you get. He is a great guy. I should say someone I won't mention names, but after one of our many controversies here at the Daily Caller, I don't even remember which one. One of my friends was concern trolling me, and said, Matt, you got to get out of there. You got to leave the Daily Caller. And he seemed to be very concerned that it was hurting my rep. And we understand, like, this is the best job you could ever have. It's like Tucker is like the most awesome person, and I'm not just sucking up. By the way, that's the thing that I don't get. Everybody says, well, he's your boss, so of course you're going to say good things. No, most people hate their bosses. It's not like of course you like him, he's your boss. No, most people, you should have the opposite reaction. You should hate your boss. But it's like, how can you leave a job that, like, basically is awesome? You do basically write whatever you want, can learn, follow ideas. It's a cool place. And he is exactly the same person. Like, that energy level that he brings, that's not like a TV thing. That's like you show up at his office at 6 o'clock on a Thursday evening, and it's the exact same thing. But the one thing I would say is the downside is no matter what I do, I can never be the most preppy dressed person in this office, and I'm not even in the top. Not in the top 10, probably.
So prep is still the conservative fashion choice.
I don't
30
know.
years after Reagan, prep is still around.
Well, I think Alex P. Keaton maybe deserves equal amount of credit for this. I don't own any sweater vests, if that's what you're asking. I do.
Nothing monogrammed?
Let me tell you a true story here. This will show you about the secret handshake. In 2010, when Ben Quayle was running for Congress, I met up with him in Scottsdale to interview him. And I showed up, and I was wearing this shirt, and this shirt has the Vineyard Vines whale on it. I'm pointing to, I think you can see it. And I think they were a little apprehensive about meeting with me because he was running against. There was like a woman named Pamela Geller, I think was her name. Pamela Gorman. Pamela Geller's different. Pamela Gorman was at one point the conservative favorite in that race, and there were like 10 people running for the seat. I think Ben was a little apprehensive about meeting with me. But as soon as he had his campaign manager, when they saw that I was wearing this Vineyard Vines shirt, they were like, okay, he's cool. Don't worry, man. He's one of us. He's cool. He's, I think it was sort of like I was in, it was like the secret handshake. So, now it's funny, this office, it's sort of like, there's different, there's some people who are, one of my colleagues, went to Swanee and kind of a southern preppy school, and so that's his look. But I mean, there's one guy who used to work here who lived in a commune, and I mean, so you get all range of dress. There is no dress code. It's like the coolest place. I have to tell you, when I signed on, I was at Politics Daily, and I jumped ship when Arianna Huffington was going to take over. When I was emailing with Neil Patel, who's our kind of, he's Tucker's partner, and he handles the business side here. And I said to him, "What is because I need to know." By the way, don't wait till after you're hired to negotiate things. Like, am I going to have an office? Like, number one, nail everything down first in writing, and then assume that they're going to, backtrack on 50% of what they promised. And by the way, this is the only place I've ever worked that didn't backtrack on everything they promised me. But anyway, so you got to nail down, like, it's not just salary. Everybody's worried about salary, but no, it's like vacation time, dress code. You got to nail down all this stuff. Is sexual harassment permitted? I mean, all these little things. These are details you have to. Yeah, I'm joking, of course. But I nailed down. I said, like, what is the dress code? And Neil said, we prefer that you wear clothes. That was literally the dress code. So anyway, I keep a blazer hanging up in the office. If you get summoned to go on TV or to a meeting or something, it's nice to have a blazer to throw on over your Hawaiian shirt. But I don't know how I got on this. I don't know how I got on this rant.
Well, but speaking of prep, Mitt Romney, he embarks on his foreign trip, which got off to a bit of a wobbly start because of this unnamed advisor saying that Obama doesn't understand the Anglo-Saxon history of the U.S.-British relationship, which I'm happy to talk about more, but I have a bigger question I want to ask you, which is, why is he doing this trip at all? It hasn't been standard practice for a candidate to do a foreign trip. It's totally unprecedented. Obviously, Obama did one. I think other candidates have. I actually remember, I don't know if you used to play the 1980s computer game President-Elect. You might be too young for that. But back in the old Radio Shack computer days, or the early Apple IIe days.
Was Oregon Trail around that time?
Maybe. But it was a text-based game, and if you're a political nerd at a young age like myself, you played President-Elect, and you were given certain choices of what to do in a given campaign week, and one of them was, do you take a foreign trip this week? So it was certainly thought about back then, but the whole point of whether you take the gamble on a foreign trip is, do you have a bang-up week, or do you commit a gaffe? If you commit a gaffe, then you might lose a few points in the polls. And that was the risk you take, taking the foreign trip. So here's Romney embarking on this. I think the conventional wisdom in recent years has been, don't take away precious days off the American campaign trail, hitting the swing states for just a handful of photo ops abroad, because typically foreign policy isn't what's top of mind in a campaign. It's usually domestic issues, and there is that risk of a gaffe. And here he starts off his trip. Something he can't control, some anonymous guy popping off to a British newspaper saying something vaguely racist. And even if you say it's not fair to tag Romney with that, I know he didn't embrace it. It still steps on his messaging. The only point of doing a trip like this is to get some messaging out of it. If you can't even get that, what's the point?
Yeah, I honestly don't know why they're there. I'm not saying it's a bad idea either. I just don't. It doesn't strike me as an obvious move. Now, it could have served to remember a week ago Romney was under assault and had been for weeks over Bain and tax returns, and so it could have been that leaving town was a way to escape that and to change the subject. As it turns out, Romney, I think that issue had sort of died a natural death. It'll probably be back, but I don't think Romney was, I feel like Romney had turned the narrative and actually gone on offensive a little bit. Was arguably winning the messaging war just as he leaves town. The obvious reason that he would do it is sort of the commander-in-chief test, but as you noted, foreign policy is probably not what the election's about. And also, it's not like Romney is clearly deficient there. I don't think anybody feels like Romney isn't well-traveled enough or that Romney isn't sufficiently knowledgeable of foreign policy or international relations. So it's not like he had to buttress it the way that I think they sent Sarah Palin abroad or something. Maybe they quickly put together. I'm trying to recall, or maybe it was people, other dignitaries who were in America that they very quickly set up meetings with her to sort of buttress her foreign policy background, because she was not well traveled, as I recall. So it's not an obvious reason.
But to your point, though, what I find particularly strange about it is, I mean, you could certainly make a case for it in certain circumstances. But one, Romney himself has said this election's about the economy. All of his messaging up to this point has been about the economy. And two, foreign policy, national security is the one area where Obama's got a clean, margin in his favor. It's unusual for the Democrat to have the clear advantage of national security, but poll after poll after poll shows that he does. So why are you going out of your way to campaign on your opponent's better turf? I know the right is still sticking to the narrative that Obama's, on a world apology tour is in over his head, but I think all polling evidence would suggest that message doesn't stick after you bag Bin Laden and Gaddafi.
Well, so I don't think that's a big deal, though, because I think that, look, it is still July. The Olympics, I think, are starting. I'm not going to watch any of it, but there's a lull.
You're not going to watch the dressage?
I don't think so. I mean, not if the Nats are playing. Let me just say that. By the way, last time I checked, Washington Nationals are in first place in the NL East, and I think the Orioles are in second place, but a few games behind.
Heady times for the Beltway.
It is. It's been a long drought when you have to rely on a hockey team to give you civic pride, and you're below the Mason-Dixon line. You have problems, and that's essentially been where we've been for about a decade. Right. And this is weird too. I mean, when I was let me just sort of derail her a little bit. The worst thing that can happen to you is to have early success. And when I was 9 years old, the Orioles won the World Series, and the Redskins, and I'm from this area, the Orioles won the World Series, and the Redskins won the Super Bowl. And I assume this is going to happen every year for the rest of my life.
Right.
And the Orioles haven't been back for 30 years or whatever. 25, however many years. So it was, yeah. So anyway, but no, back to Romney. I mean, there's a lull right now, and so maybe it's July. He does his international trip. He checks the box off, and then he goes back to relentlessly talking about the economy for the next 3 months or however long, going into the convention. And this is also a time to test out his surrogates. I think people like Marco Rubio, Kelly Ayotte, and others are out on the trail. Ostensibly, in some cases, this could even be testing a potential vice president.
And once he returns in early August, he has essentially 2 weeks, 3 weeks, before he has to make that VP choice. So maybe this
before
is the last leg of he has to before the convention.
And let me also
at the convention.
Let me also announce right here that I would say unless Rubio is picked, I will likely be joining George W. Bush and other dignitaries by not going to the convention this year. So
why would you not go to Tampa?
Well, I mean, there's several factors, including the fact that if you first of all, I've been to a lot of conventions. Not a lot, but I've been to a few conventions. Second of all, they're great for sort of networking and getting a feel for what's happening. But they're also, they've become, nothing's going to be decided there. It's not like 1976 when Reagan, potentially could have wrested the delegates from Ford. If Romney picks a Tim Pawlenty or a Rob Portman, it's a show. And honestly, if you want to cover the speeches, ostensibly the news that's going to be made there, you could do it better from TV. Now, there's also the fact that I happen to believe Tampa could be a disaster logistically. I don't know.
That would be fun to watch.
Yeah, it could be fun to watch. Here's the thing. If I were like a columnist, if I were like a weekly column, I would be more into like sort of going and sort of hanging out and getting a feel and then writing an overall piece about it. But if you feel compelled to write 3 to 5 to 7 blog posts a day, depending, again, they're MacGyver bloggers, the Dave Weigels, the Philip Kleins, who, like, I don't know, they could take like a banana and a coconut and a thumbtack and get Wi-Fi access and like sit in a corner somewhere with like all people just cruising by them and like bang out 5 blog posts. But I'm an inside blogger, and I've done this stuff before. And I don't know that history's. If Rubio's picked, I think it's an historical thing, and I've been covering Rubio for years, and I've sort of broken news about Rubio, and I think I might have been the first person to like argue he should be president, run for president this time. I would kind of feel compelled to probably go. Here's the other thing too. I have a 19-month-old baby at home and a very pregnant wife at home. So there's also the sort of familial responsibilities.
I understand that.
So there's that. So I mean, like,
I'm negotiating whether I go to Charlotte, and my wife would let me go.
Aaron would,
but
my wife would also let me.
Right. But I know I'm going to hear it once I'm there about all the things that she's having to juggle. I don't want her to have to juggle those things if she doesn't have to. So
rest assured,
I'm wearing.
And if I'm not there, I can assure all of our listeners and viewers across this fruited plain and even international, the Daily Caller will be very representative and certainly a very large contingent, as I think, to it. So it's not like there won't be Daily Caller coverage, but anyway. So we'll see. If it's Pawlenty or Portman, you know.
You're not at a front seat of history if it's Pawlenty or Portman. If it's Rubio, then maybe there's a little bit more electricity in the air, and maybe you want to be there to see it up close.
Look, I like Tim Pawlenty. He's a good guy. I just don't think someday I'm going to be, sitting my grandchild, Matt III or whatever, little Burke Lewis on my knee saying, "Your grandpa was there when Tim Pawlenty was nominated as vice president." I just don't know that that's gonna. Maybe he goes on to become the next Ronald Reagan, and but I don't think that's gonna happen. Maybe it'll happen. So, but anyway, but as you were saying, as Matt Rhodes has emailed me about 100 times, Romney's campaign manager, sometime between now and the convention, Romney will have to select a running mate. He's been stating the obvious, but yes.
So this trip could be. I mean, that's the main reason for taking the trip. I imagine they would use the time to put the surrogates out in the spotlight a little bit more and see how they do. Well, I don't need to dwell on the trip. The other.
And it's not surprising. I don't get why he would, be going on this trip when I don't even want to go to Florida. So that doesn't escape me.
Now, you and I talked about the whole you didn't build that flap. I might say manufactured outrage. You might say gaffe. Last week, and that is still churning because the Romney campaign and the Road Sewer PAC are running ads on it. The Obama campaign felt to run a response ad to it. With him speaking to the camera directly and saying, "I've been quoted out of context. Of course, small business owners build their own businesses," and then using it to dovetail into his pitch for, greater investment to help small business. So obviously, you can look at that fact that he felt a response to it to say, "Okay, the Romney campaign drew a little blood there. They felt compelled to respond." But I also think that. Obama's, I think, historically been very good on the defense like that, turning the tables around, and particularly when he's able to say, "Look at how ridiculous Washington's being." And there was that tone in his voice in the ad saying, "This is ridiculous. Who actually would believe that?" Obviously, I'm quoting context because it's a ridiculous argument. And the Rove ad, which I think is just totally brazen and dishonest ad. I don't think I've ever seen it as dramatically a dishonest ad, where they take clips from the Obama ad and another Obama speeches where he's saying, "I've been spliced and diced," and they do it like a football sports commentary. "Let's go to the videotape," and then they go to the videotape. it's transparently obvious they're splicing and dicing. I mean, they're not showing you a fuller context; they're showing you a snippet. Just by definition, it's spliced.
Well, the RNC, I will say, the RNC put up a video of in context. So I thought that was a cool idea.
Well, I did, and the Romney campaign has it on their site too. And I gotta say, a bigger chunk that I would think isn't even necessary to show the full context. And I'm looking at it saying, "Wow, this is really helping Obama make his point." Why are you doing that? But I assume it's to give themselves some cover and saying, "Hey, we're not splicing. Look, we did this." But that gives them some license to then repeat it more truncated in the future. The Rove ad, though, is just straight up, is just straight up hackery. And I just think it's bad hackery because it's so obvious what they're doing. I just think it undercuts their own point. And a lot of folks on the left are really nervous about the super PAC money. I just feel I see the Rove ads and I say to myself, they're wasting their money. Most of these Rove ads are really bad and just aren't. I don't think they're really don't really strike the target they want to strike.
I didn't see. I honestly didn't see the Rove ad. I don't think. I can say a couple things. First of all, Andrew Sullivan has a very good blog post up about this, and
I know you're a big Andrew Sullivan fan.
Well, I am a fan of him in the sense that I think he is a great blogger. He is great at what he does, and in terms of curating information, he is the master. It doesn't mean look. The guy is like, how do you go from the positions that he shifted on? I mean, it's a little bit absurd, but I admire anybody. Like. Derek Jeter plays for the Yankees, and I hate the Yankees, but I can still say he's a good player. I admire his. He is very talented, and he's built like this sort of blog empire where he employs a lot of people who help him in a very effective manner, I would say. But he had a very good blog post pointing, and it's nuanced, but he does say. Don't say I didn't blog this. You didn't blog this. That what I've accomplished because of my effort. And so even Andrew Sullivan thinks there's something to Obama's gaffe. That the emphasis that yes, it's more complicated than Romney might want you to believe, but Obama's emphasis is concerning, and it does speak to a concerning worldview. Now, having said that,
sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, having said that. Romney is clearly beating a dead horse. I mean, Romney is obviously exploiting this to the hilt. And that's what campaigning is. It's taking any little thing, and I don't think this is a little thing, but essentially it's taking something and blowing it wildly out of proportion. And honestly, I think that's what Obama did to Romney a few weeks ago. And I think it pissed off Romney enough that he has given his team the go-ahead to be shameless and beating this dead horse, and they are going to take this as far as they can take it, and that's what this campaign is about. It's essentially, again, Bill, we go back and forth, but I think you're going to have to admit I was right that this campaign, we're both right because the good thing about this is the good thing about this petty argument is that underneath it there is a real question of, as we mentioned last week, a question about rugged individualism versus communitarianism. So,
there's another Obama ad that went out this week. Also, Obama looking at the camera. It's called "The Choice."
Yeah,
and it is just a straight up, framing. Here's what he's for. Here's what I'm for. It's very philosophical. He's saying Romney says if we cut taxes at the very top. And have fewer regulations, that's going to grow the economy. The problem is we tried that already before. It didn't work. I believe we need to invest in infrastructure and education and in homegrown American energy. We need to raise taxes on the wealthy to quote, pay down our debt. And that's the more complete three-dimensional approach to long-term growth and prosperity. And I think it is, it's a high-minded ad. It's about big themes. It's about a big ideological debate. It's not trying to blur the lines. And I think it's a play for a mandate on Obama's part to say, if I win re-election, I have the people at my back to do the big public investments in these areas. and not be hamstrung the way I've been the last 2 years. I'm going to be able to go back to Congress and say, look, the people voted for this. If you don't get on board, you're going to pay the price in 2 years. So I don't think I think Obama is trying to win in a way. I mean, if he wins ugly, then it's more likely he has an ugly 4 years because he has less of a mandate. And look, most second terms are unproductive. They tend to run out of gas. It would be unusual to have a fresh shot on the arm where he could really achieve some big things. But I think most presidents do want to get that. And Obama is not trying to hold on to the job by hook or by crook. He's trying to hold on to it in a way that he actually has the freedom to implement more reforms.
Well, I agree with everything you said, except I do think Obama is trying to win ugly. But I agree with your point that you need. I'm not
saying he doesn't throw any elbows. Obviously, he does. I mean, and I think that the Democrats have whined for a long time that their candidates are too soft and they can't face up to the Lee Atwaters and the Karl Roves, and why can we have someone who can play a little hardball? And now you got one. I mean, look, I think Obama plays hardball. I don't disagree with that, but I don't think it's only hardball. I think it's combined with a desire to win with a clear mandate.
So yeah, very very interesting, and I think something we'll be talking a lot about in the coming weeks.
So, but do you think that because Obama's doing that you think Romney was running a nicer campaign before, and now he's taking the gloves off?
I think that Romney was a bit naive, and I think that Romney was. Obama had a very bad spring, despite the fact that, as we've discussed ad nauseum, despite the fact that Obama had essentially defined the debates, he was not having a good spring. Jobs numbers were bad. He had committed some unforced errors, and I think that Romney. So I think that when Romney won the nomination, he wanted to prove to conservatives that he was going to be tough and bring them in, and he started off. He started off kind of being tough. And then I think Obama proceeded to sort of, there was bad news and he made some unforced errors. And I think that Romney then went into this sort of rope-a-dope strategy, which, says don't interfere with your opponent when he's in the process of destroying himself. And I think Romney was just trying to lay low below the radar. And so he took the pressure off Obama. And a lot of us thought that was a mistake. You don't quit fighting. If your opponent's on the defense, you keep him on the defense. You don't let him get back up. And Obama got back up, and Romney paid for that. Then we went through this period in the summer where Obama was relentlessly pounding Romney on releasing his taxes, on the Bain stuff. When did he leave Bain? Was it 1999 or 2000 or whatever? And I think during this time, Romney, and by the way, McKay Coppins at the Daily Beast.
Was it Daily Beast or BuzzFeed?
You're right. BuzzFeed, sorry. Thank you. McKay Coppins, he was at the Daily Beast. He used to be at the Daily Beast. Now he's at BuzzFeed. So okay. So McKay Coppins at BuzzFeed interviewed some anonymous Romney people during the time, during the sort of nadir of Romney's campaign this summer, and they said things that led me to believe that Romney had been naive. But now Romney was like, screw this, I'm going to take the gloves off, finally. And I don't necessarily find that flattering, by the way, that Romney could have been naive. But that was my interpretation, at least. And
well, I mean, I largely agree. I don't think naive, though. I mean, I don't think they're rookies. I mean, look, they got plenty nasty in the Republican primary where they felt they had to be. But I do agree they thought they I agree with the rope-a-dope part that you were saying. They thought they had a moment where they could lay low and Obama would
that was
persecute himself.
That was a big mistake.
And I think that in modern presidential campaign warfare, the last candidate to kind of take a breather was John Kerry in 2004 in August, in the famous Swift vote month.
Yeah.
And
by the way, the people were saying, as you'll recall at the time, some people were saying, "Oh, it's August. No way, this doesn't matter."
Right. And that was their thinking that we're not going to be hypersensitive. We're not going to help fuel a smear by responding to it too early. And it's August anyway, and we want to husband our cash. So I'm sure if we just lay low, this will go away on its own.
Right. And by the way, there's an analogy there with Romney too. His money. I don't know how to explain this, but
it's mostly designated for the general. He can't spend a lot of the primary season
until the convention. And so I think they were trying to.
It's technically primary season until he gets the actual nomination to the convention.
Yes. You have said it in a way that I could not. Thank you.
I think this is a very interesting subject, by the way, because it didn't used to be like this. It didn't used to be that the conventions were at the end of the summer. They used to be in the dog days of summer. There'd be one in mid-July and one in mid-August. Then everyone would take a vacation and then kind of get back into it after Labor Day. And Bush was the pioneer of getting cute with the date. In 2000, I think it was his first, maybe it was 2004. I can't remember which one. But basically, he was trying to play the campaign finance rules so you get a ton of money in the primary season without a cap, and then go into the public financing scheme in the fall. But it'd be for a smaller window, it'd only be for 2 months. So you essentially get a free check from the government for 2 months, and won't have to sweat any more fundraising.
Well, there's also the thing too about trying to be like I don't know how they decide whose convention goes last. I mean, is it whoever won the All-Star game that year?
Well, it's always alternated.
But is that what it is? Because you want to go last. Because if there's a bump, like the Republicans go first this year, right? Is that right? So if there's a huge bump, like if they pick Marco Rubio, let's say, I don't know that, but let's say they do, and there's a huge bump coming out of the convention, it's going to get swallowed up by the Democratic convention.
But when they used to alternate, civilly, and you're choosing between mid-July and mid-August, it was who cares who go last. It's all in the summer.
Right.
So no one's getting that head of steam into Labor Day, and Bush was the first one. I mean, he didn't quite violate the gentleman's agreement, but he kind of pushed on it by going all the way at the end of August. And then in 2008, they both, had a traffic jam at the end of the summer where, Obama was slated to go first, but he goes in, I think it was like the second to last week of August or last week of August, and then McCain went all the way into Labor Day. And they get the same sort of deal now where the Republicans are the last week of August and the Democrats are over Labor Day. So they both kind of negate or there's an attempt to at least minimize the bump that the last guy gets, but they're both trying to get that head of steam going into the last stretch. And while they're not doing it now to get the free check from the government, I think they're both not participating in public financing at all. Is that I think that's right, at least. Correct me if I'm wrong. Comment.
I think you're right.
But Romney, I think, has now gotten a little upended by playing cute because he still has to deal with these rules about what money is in the primaries and what's in the general.
And by the way, it's funny because I did this piece a while back, like a couple months ago, where I sort of compared what had happened in the race to a football game. And for your fans watching, Bill, that's American football.
My North Melbourne Kangaroos have leaked into the top 8 in Aussie football, by the way. A very dramatic victory they had last week. So things are very, very exciting down under.
Well, one of the things that I talked about was that, and there were a lot, and I need to update it because Romney, well, first of all, Romney tried to play a prevent defense too early, and that's the rope-a-dope thing. But the main football analogy that I was using, or that applies here, is there are teams who back into the playoffs. Like the New York Giants have won, I think, 2 Super Bowls in the past 5 years by sort of, they barely make it in, and they have to fight their way in, and then once they get in, they don't get any bye weeks. They have to play every week, and they have to basically win 5 straight games to be the Super Bowl champions. And typically, this is thought of as a disadvantage. Typically, it's thought that it's better to win your division, like the Patriots did a few years ago, essentially go undefeated, and then you get like a bye. Yeah, you get like a bye week off, then you get home field advantage, and if you get time off, it means your players get rested, and all this stuff. You can have an extra week to practice. Well, as I wrote a few months ago, sometimes that is a curse, not a blessing, because you sort of get lazy. You're a little bit rusty. Maybe you think you're too good, and the team that has to fight their way in, and of course the analogy here is Romney having to go through a bitter primary, in some cases is a little more prepped. It's like, yes, they're tired, yes, they're injured, but they're battle tested. And so initially I thought that Romney was sort of like the Giants, that he had to fight his way in, but he was better off. But now I see that being rested helped Obama because he didn't have to waste all that money in a bitter primary. And I think that as time has gone on, help me out here, Bill. Explain this better.
But I think your initial point is still correct. I still think more often than not, the battle-tested person, stays in his or her groove, and the person with the week off can get a little flabby and not be ready for prime time. I think the difference in this case is Romney ended his primary, one, not terribly battle-tested, up against a very weak field they essentially crushed with money, not by actually answering his own weaknesses and putting them to bed. And then after he wins, he's the guy that takes a break. Right. And the Obama team didn't spend their off season just sitting around. They spent their off season. They competed. They had dry runs in all the primary states. Obama would always give a big speech during all the Republican debates, so they'd make sure they didn't own the message for that day. And as soon as Ronnie got that nomination, they started going to town on him on day one. So I don't think that Obama campaign ever took that break off, even though structurally they certainly could have, and a lot of campaigns would have. So I think that's why Romney's had a tougher time pulling off the rope-a-dope, because we're up against a campaign that's learned from the Kerry mistake of 2004, saying you don't take weeks off. You never let up. Now Romney's not so bad off that he can't recover from that mistake, but there is a theory out there that the early narratives get set early and don't change. You're not going to get a second.
Romney should hire that guy from the Cobra Kai, the sensei from the Cobra Kai dojo, who was like, I want you to put him out of commission. But sensei, he said, put him out of commission. Yes, sensei. That's what they needed to do. Mercy is for the weak. We do not train to be merciful here. A man confronts you, he is the enemy. What is the problem, Mr. Lawrence? Okay.
That is tough to pull. It's one thing if you're Ralph Macchio. It's another thing if you're an incumbent president. It's tough to take out the head.
And by the way, I made a Johnny Lawrence reference just minutes ago in my office here amongst our interns, and they looked at me like I was insane. Like they have no. I'm like, look,
they've seen a different Karate Kid.
I guess, but it's a classic. I mean, look, Citizen Kane was before my time too, but I still know what Rosebud is. I mean, it's incumbent upon you to learn this stuff.
There are certain 80s movies that do seem to be part of the canon for all teenagers forevermore. I feel like the kids today seem to know Breakfast Club, for example. But Karate Kid might have fallen off of the required viewing for the next generation.
Well, it's not on TV every 5 minutes like Roadhouse, or what's that movie with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze?
Bill and Ted's.
No. Breakpoint.
Point Break. That is one of the worst movies of all time. Oh my God, what a horrible movie.
So anyway, speaking of movies, my big idea this week, Bill.
Yeah.
And I'm about to write about this, so you're going to help prep me for writing about this. And God, I wish that our listeners, viewers, were live; they could chime in too. I watched the 21 Jump Street movie, speaking of 80s, I watched the 21 Jump Street movie. Which
how did it compare to the TV show?
Oh, it's completely different. Although there are cameos from Johnny Depp and Dom DeLuise's son and what's her name? Robinson? The
Holly Robinson Pete.
Holly Robinson Pete, who sings in the TV show the theme, which I think is quite good. But anyway, it's nothing like the TV show, except from the obvious premise, which is that these are people who go undercover into high schools to try to catch drug dealers. But otherwise, nothing at all like the TV show. But I'm watching the movie, and there's a scene where it's basically Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill, and they're partners who graduated high school 5 years ago. And when they were in high school, Channing Tatum was a really cool guy, popular guy, and Jonah Hill was sort of this nerd. And so now 5 years later, they go undercover and they go back to school. And Channing Tatum, as they're walking into the school, says, like, let me show you how to be cool. We have to establish our dominance from day one, first day of school. Let me show you how to do it. Like, the first thing you do is you don't care about anything, and you have to, like, pick on kids who do. So he sees this kind of, I guess, nerdy African-American kid, and he's like, look, he's trying. Look at him. He's trying, you nerd. And then they get into, like, a little altercation, and he says something about, like, gay ass, and he punches this kid. And he thinks
Channing Tatum does.
Channing Tatum punches this kid and calls him gay ass or something. Well, turns out the kid's actually gay, and all the other cool kids around who actually go to the school are like, that wasn't cool, man. And they're like, and so like and then through the course of the movie, it becomes clear that that Jonah Hill, the skills that he had that made him a nerd 5 years ago are now popular, and so like, he's like more like politically correct and sensitive and artistic, and now he's the cool kid, and Channing Tatum, who was the sort of macho jock, politically incorrect guy, is now sort of the outcast. And it strikes me that, like, this is a phenomenon that really happened. And I'm writing about it today. But sometime between Generation X and the millennial generation, there was this change. And, like, for example, during my era and even before, from the 60s, from, like, 1960 till 1997, let's say, you didn't want to look like you were trying. You didn't want to, if you were smart, that was sort of a geeky thing. You at least didn't want
to care was uncool.
Like, being a slacker was cool. And also, the worst thing you could be was a sellout. You didn't want to sell out. Like, we're just about the music, man. We're not selling out. Well, today's kids are, like, entrepreneurial. Like, they want to, like, start little businesses. And damn kids today. So, anyway, I raised this as an issue. Why did this happen? When did this happen? I've been noticing this phenomenon for a long time, that, like, today's kids, damn kids today, the kids who listen to Vampire Weekend and Arcade Fire, and they're sort of, like, artistic and sensitive and smart, and they try, and they study, and they're sort of proud of it. It's a different scene, and I've noticed it, but I didn't have a way to sort of prove that this was a phenomenon until the 21 Jump Street movie actually makes a point about it.
Well, I hope you're right. I hope that school culture has evolved and matured since our day. You certainly can see in the movies. You certainly see, I think, the kinds of character stereotypes are different now. I mean, look, you go back to the 80s. I mean, the 90s, there may have been an anti-self theme in the 90s. You're a little younger than me, Mr. Lewis. Yeah, I grew up in the Reagan era, where it was the secret of my success. There was plenty of worship of money back in 80s movies. And even the types of movies that were about, nerd triumph over jocks. It often was. What's that?
I'm thinking, is it like Can't Buy Me Love or Revenge of the Nerds? What?
I'm thinking Revenge of the Nerds and Breakfast Club come to mind, where in one hand, it's supposed to be celebrating the deeper nerd, but they triumph by acting like douchebag jocks.
Right.
I mean, regular nerds. I mean, I don't mean to be. I'm sorry if I sound too glib, but the big scene is that the nerd date rapes the lead woman. I mean, and that's considered a big triumph. I mean, it's a really sick, disturbing scene at the very end.
Those movies from that era, those kind of movies. I'm so glad we are past that. I'm so glad.
So I feel like sort of the messages from the culture these days. Maybe some of the social conservative folks disagree with me on this, because there's sort of you still sort of have an unvarnished picture of high school that's not. But there is
a new fiscal conservative thing now, where like young people want to start businesses and be more entrepreneurial, and it's not seen as a bad thing to want, like like if you were a band, and maybe this is the influence of hip hop, I don't know, but it used to be like, don't let, remember seen in the Doors movie with Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison.
I never saw the movie.
Okay, well, you should see it. But "Come On, Baby, Light My Fire," they turn it into like "Come On, Baby, Buy My Car," or so, something like they want to sell that song and make it into a jingle for an advertisement. And like Jim Morrison is outraged by this. You can't commercialize my music. And I mean, I guess there's still some of that. I think Beach House refused to sell a song to Volvo or something, and they just stole it. Basically, wrote their own Beach House song. But by and large, I feel like that
why is it the illusion is gone then? That there's any sort of that rock is anything but a business.
Yeah, the stigma against profiting seems to have been removed.
I generally agree with you there. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a deeper triumph of conservatism over liberalism, but I do think that people understand that being in a rock band is being an individual small business, and if you don't find a way to make money, you don't get to do it.
Right.
And certainly any stigma about your music being used in advertisements, for example, I mean that's totally gone. I mean you have tons of indie rock acts that make their mark, that get introduced to the public through advertising, and people actively pursue that. And so, to the extent that that's seen as a way that you actually can do the music that you want to do, I mean, the thing that probably still is considered a no-no is having to do music that you don't want to do, or is not true to your artistic spirit.
Yeah.
But that's seen as less in conflict with the private sector, because the private sector, I think, is more diverse now than it was, and so there's more niche marketing going on, and so you can do your own thing and be in advertising at the same time, and therefore I think that's what reduces the stigma.
Well, two of the things that struck me in the movie, that's one of the first scenes where Channing Tatum says, "He's trying. Look at him. He's trying." That used to be seen as trying to be smart or successful, used to be seen as like lame. That's no longer the case. And also, Channing Tatum thought that like calling somebody gay would be acceptable in a derogatory fashion. And but these kids today were more like, he is gay, and like they were more like politically correct / tolerant. Than they had been. And I think maybe that's a change, too. But I would love to hear, this is where I need the wisdom of the crowds. I would love to hear from our viewers and listeners. And just because I don't always comment, and I know, Bill, you sometimes go in and you will write comments, and you
at times. Sometimes I don't have a lot to do on a Friday night, so you know that I'm really stuck.
But I do read them. I do read them, and because we have very smart commenters here, and I would like, and it's not just saying that, they really are. They really are. But compared to like most blogs, for example, I mean the people. This is like a very smart audience. So, but I would love to know, like, what is this? What is this phenomenon? When did it start? What's behind it? Why has it not been that noticed or remarked upon? Has it been? Is there an article someone wrote that I should know about? I mean, love to hear about this because I'm going to write about it today, but sometimes I write about things several times, and I'd love to get your take on that.
Excellent. Let's leave it on that note, Mr. Lewis.
Sounds good.
Always good to talk to you.
Likewise, my DMZ partner. And I mean partner in a strictly, platonic way.
We'll catch you next week here at the DMZ.